Hi, everyone. I hope you guys had a nice weekend inside, safe and social distancing. What's that? Let me get set up here. So today we have a very special guest. Cindy Crawford will be joining us to talk about both of her home births. And yeah, I'm really excited. So let me get her requested. There she is. Okay. Hi, Larr.
I'm there.
Hi.
Hi, Carson.
You did it. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. It's so nice to see your face. Thank you so much for doing this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I've been starting out each one for those of you who are new to my Instagram or to this little series I'm doing. Welcome and thank you. I know this has been a very difficult and scary time for all of us, and mothers in particular right now who are about to give birth. And it's been really exciting to see so much attention around home birth, which, you know, Cindy and I both have a very special place in our hearts, knowing how supported that birth can look like. But also knowing that there's so much misunderstanding around home birth and so much to learn around home birth. And so in no way are we saying, you know, now is the time to rush to home birth, right? It's so important to have that discussion with your provider, because for some it is not the best option, and also to feel safe for you and where it is so important for you to feel safe where you're birthing, and that looks different for all of us. So with that, you know, these stories that we've been in Q&As we've been doing over the past few days with midwives and other moms have been, for me, an amazing source of just inspiration. I think birth is the ultimate reminder of humanity, of how strong we are, how connected we are, and just been pumping myself and hopefully others with a lot of oxytocin. So with that, let's get started.
Great.
My first question for you is, how did you know you wanted to have a home birth?
Well, I didn't. I never even considered home birth. I never thought about it. I was all signed up for, at the time we were living between New York and LA. So I was like, I'm going to be in New York, in the hospital, get my epidural. Like, that's how all my friends did it. That's how I was going to do it. And a friend of mine who's a makeup artist, she invited me to a yoga class, a prenatal yoga class. And why it's really funny is she wasn't even pregnant. But she was studying with Guru Mook, and she knew that she did these prenatal yoga classes. And my friend Carol just thought I would really enjoy it. So she came with me. And I think the first thing that was great was just connecting with other pregnant women. And
So
just,
important.
I'm still friends with those women to this day, and our kids are 20. But also what Guru Mook, the yoga teacher, what she talked about was just how, like, pregnancy is natural. It's normal. You're not sick. It's not a condition. We're not weaker when we're pregnant. In fact, like, we're stronger. And I think that she showed me that through even the yoga that I was able to do.
Yeah.
So in that class, she wasn't advocating home birth. I think what she was advocating was choices.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what, you know, I would never push anyone or talk anyone into doing home birth. I think it's just nice to know that it is an option that's available. And I would just, anyone who's even at all curious, I would encourage to do their own research. I think what people think it is, it's different than the reality of what home birth looks like.
Yeah.
Anyway, so through that yoga class, I was like, I started having more trust in my body to go through the process. Obviously, I was seeing my OB. I mean, I was taking my vitamins. It wasn't like I just was like throwing the world out.
But it helps to reframe, right? And I think that like prenatal yoga can do this for a lot of people, or, you know, learning more about home birth, right? But it's this idea that, like you said, we're not sick, right? There are some cases where, yes, pregnancy can be very high risk depending on certain conditions. But for the most part, a low risk pregnancy, right? Like you said, you have so much more, you can make these decisions for your body and how you want to birth, which I think is a really powerful message, even to bring into the hospital.
Right. So that was my journey. I started investigating hospitals that had more like natural birthing places. And for me, and this is only for me, I felt like if I'm going to try to go natural, I would have a better chance achieving that in a natural setting of my home. But yes, I had a backup doctor. Not there, because in LA, or at least I couldn't find any doctor that would come to my house. So, but I had a midwife, and then she had 2 birth doulas with her. So I felt very supported. You know,
so
as
what
well
point
as
in your pregnancy did you switch over?
I was probably 30 weeks when I made the decision, because like I said, up until I didn't even go to the yoga class till I was 20 weeks.
Yeah.
And as I started thinking about it and doing a little bit of research and homework, it probably took 10 weeks. And again, I didn't get so stuck, like I'm having a home birth no matter what. It was just like, this is my plan. Let's see how it goes. But obviously, sometimes things don't work out the way that you're supposed to. So it was like, if I would have ended up, and what my midwife really reassured me and my husband, because Randy was not into the idea at all. He did not understand home birth.
One of my
like,
questions for you.
Yeah, he was like, why would we do that? We have insurance, and and I just was like, I just said, I'm curious. Let's just find out. And I think the more he learned about it as well, we both felt like our midwife had attended over 1,000 births. You know, she explained to us even that of those 1,000, only a handful had ended up going to the hospital. And it wasn't even like emergency rushing to the hospital. It was like, you know what? Things aren't progressing. You need to go to the hospital.
Yeah. Something Lindsay, the midwife who came on Friday, told us was she has a 6 to 7% hospital transfer rate, and only 1% of those are emergencies. So those of you who are just tuning in, right, the non-emergency transfers are wanting an epidural, right, exhaustion, needing sleep, maybe needing some fluids, or stalled labor. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but just for context.
Yeah. So once we kind of made the decision, even though that was the plan, I wasn't like, I'm going to have this baby at home no matter what. And it was just like, I'm going to stay at home as long as I can and hopefully have the baby at home.
Yeah. And so you said through kind of talking to the midwife was how Randy became more comfortable with it. What did you guys, just in education, essentially? Yeah,
because I think even when I posted yesterday that I was going to be doing this talk with you, you know, you definitely have people that are very against home birth, and everyone has a story. And there are a lot of people that, like you said, high risk, or sometimes that you do need to be in the hospital to have a baby. Obviously, the C-section at home.
Yeah, of course.
But there's also risks of being in the hospital.
Absolutely.
And infection is one of them. And for the mother and the child, and especially right now, it's like, it's just, and look, I love my doctors. I nurture those relationships. I rely on their expertise. And even this decision wasn't made without talking to my doctor as well. But, you know, I think what's really cool about the midwives is they really talk to you about, like, not only your own state of mind about pregnancy and birth, but they asked me like my mother's birthing experiences. And my mom had 4 kids, all natural. So I didn't even have my mom's fear transferred on me. My mom didn't really have any fear about.
Were they home births or unmedicated hospital births?
They were unmedicated hospital births. And the last one was like 30 minutes labor. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get that from her. I had a 17-hour labor and a 33-hour labor.
Oh my gosh. In that order?
Yes, which was a surprise. Because I thought
the second is a little faster generally.
right. Everyone told me I was prepared. Like the first one, you have nothing, you don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
And so when I was pregnant the second time and decided to do home birth again, I was like, oh, it's going to be shorter. And it wasn't, because she was posterior presentation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more like the back labor and much longer. And you know what I will say, for me, again, being at home, being able to walk around, because when I was in labor with my second child, Kaya, I just couldn't, like it wasn't happening. And my midwife kept saying, you should try standing up. And I was like, I don't want to stand up. I'm just too tired and blah, blah. She's like, okay. And then like an hour later, I think you should stand up. I don't want to stand up. Finally, I stood up, and that's when I delivered. It was like, and being able to stand up, like have my faculties about me, and like being able to move around, that's what helped me go through the process.
Totally. And the integration, like you said, medicine plays a really important role. You talk to your doctor, I'm sure you had different tests, blood tests, ultrasounds, all of that. But what midwives can bring is, and they bring a bag full of medical equipment, right? They're fully equipped and trained in the medical area, but also have an understanding of our, the structure of our pelvis, right? And we talk about a baby's position, right? That movement and certain things that we don't learn in medical school. You just we don't teach it. It's like so simple and basic when you look at a pelvic model, right? And the positioning of the baby. And we kind of have to go backwards in a way and undo some of our like incredible life-saving knowledge just to have the simplicity of position changing.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's so many great, like, you know, birthing nurses who, I mean, look, anyone who attends to a pregnant woman, having gone through it twice, it's such a gift for everybody. I mean, they're the two highlights of my life, even though I was like in excruciating pain at one point during both of my deliveries. But what I really loved about my midwife was I had a real relationship with her. Like when I started seeing her at 30 weeks, and I would come and see her every week, you know, it was like, yes, checking vitals, checking all the things she needed to check, but then it was like really getting to know me so that she understood like what might come up for me in the birth experience. So by the time it was the day and I called her and she came over, there was this feeling like, so many of my friends will be like, oh, who delivered your baby? And they're like, oh, Dr. So-and-so. I think when you do home birth, or maybe even, you know, midwife assisted birth in a hospital or natural birth in a hospital, I delivered my baby. The midwife steps back. It was like, I felt so empowered by it. And I think that was like the unexpected gift for me, was that it was like running a super marathon or whatever, but I got through it. So that sense of empowerment helped me in my role as a new mom too. Because I was like, well, if I can do that, I can do it.
Right. I love even that's just the phrasing around it, right? We talk about a doctor delivering it, and I'm always like, the doctor caught the baby. Let's be clear. The mom did all the work, doctor or midwife, right? They catch, or the mom catches. But that in itself, right? Like you said, it's just like you grow that baby, you make that baby, you deliver that baby, no matter who's catching it, and then you raise the baby, right? It's like you said, it's your first role of being like reminded that this baby's in your hands, right? Eventually, as they grow. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, and I just also loved, like for us, I felt like, you know, like there's a much stronger role for the dad or the partner to play, I think, in home birth, because I feel like especially my husband would have been more like, okay, we're at the hospital, like, okay, I'm not in charge anymore. But when you're at home birth, like he was the only man around. I really needed him, and literally needed him for support at times. And he had to step up in a really beautiful, like, I think he felt more, even though he was the one who didn't really want to do it, but smartly let me make my own decision. I think that he also really liked it. And then you're home. I mean, an hour later, you're in your bed. They've cleaned it. You're with your baby and your husband, and I mean, it's just magical.
How did it change from first baby to second baby with Randy? Like, was he by the second time really gung-ho about it?
I think by the second time he just because we had a great outcome
Experience.
Then I think that we were both like, why wouldn't we do it this way again? I think the only tricky part is what do you do with a 2-year-old when the mom's in labor?
Yeah,
Because
what
you don't
did you
really
do?
want to scare them. It kind of worked out perfect. I went into labor, like real labor was all night. And then in the morning, our babysitter came and she took Presley to the park. And when he came back from the park, I had a baby.
Yeah, their little sister.
And he actually got to help cut the cord
Oh.
and, really be part of it. I mean, the timing couldn't have been better.
Yeah.
So that was great.
Yeah, that's definitely a concern of some people that I hear, right? If they have other kids at home or even live with family, which the birthing center can be a really great option. But I've even been to some births where it's a lot of births happen at night. So like the other child is sleeping or that they're there witnessing it. But even being able to, I'm sure for Presley, it informs his confidence around the experience as well. Like you said about your own birth, like culturally, how do we know birth? What's our experience to it? And it's so beautiful to have that intimacy.
Look, the thing about, and this is what I say to everybody, I mean, the whole point of it is a healthy baby, right? Yeah. So there's no judgment about, every woman should feel, as you said at the beginning, safe in whatever choice she makes and comfortable. And for some people, they feel comfortable in a hospital bed.
And with an epidural. It's an amazing invention.
Or a scheduled C-section.
100%.
Whatever it is.
Totally.
But for me, it was once I started even understanding that it was a choice. That was like eye-opening to me because none of my friends had done it. And I remember even telling one of my best friends that I was planning it. And she was like, "You're crazy." And then I just stopped telling people.
Yeah.
And then I just said, they said, "Oh, where are you having your baby?" I just said the hospital that I would have, that was closest to me. And some of our family, we didn't tell because I didn't want their fear and their scared, their fears to be projected onto me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we see too in this time, and we're all guilty of it, maybe the wrong word, but the scary news sells, right? And we have we're kind of partial to that kind of news. And I find that a lot about home birth. We all, have somebody who's approached us with a certain story, and there, like you said, risks in all areas of our lives.
Right.
But it's really important, I think, to protect that space. And even for people right now birthing in hospitals that are projecting other people projecting fears of what that might look like in this time.
Right. Right.
To kind of create that space, be informed, right? Get the information, get the evidence-based knowledge, and, have the support of a doula, midwife, OB, somebody who is going to help you make the best decision. But I love that. But then protect that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so important.
Yeah.
So first birth, 17 hours, second, 33.
Yes.
What do you remember about managing pain? What was your...
It's interesting because I remember, a lot of couples make birth playlists, right? Music that you're going to play during the birth. And after the birth of my first child, I said to Randy, why didn't you ever put the music on? He's like, "Cindy, it was playing the whole time." I think with that first experience, I went very inward. I almost don't even remember anything happening around me. It was just a place where I went very internal. I don't even think I vocalized that much or whatever. And then the second was a completely different experience, even where I was, I remember, and I use not nice language, but basically said to my midwife, "Get your freaking hands away from me or off me or whatever," because it was a different kind of pain. At one point I was screaming and, but not in an out of control way. And I remember because it was longer and I wasn't expecting that. I think because with the first, I didn't have any idea what to expect. With the second, I thought, it's going to be a breeze. It'll be half the time.
Flowers, yeah.
And it was almost twice the time. and more painful. But that was a gift too, because for me, the type of person I am, like so much, I don't let it all hang out, right? So when I wrote about my second birth, there was even this feeling of like, what a gift that was to just be like, "Bleh." You know what I mean? I think I didn't have to be on like polite behavior. And it was with people that had already been through my first birth with me. But I remember even my midwife saying afterwards, like, wow, that was like a different version of Cindy than we saw the first time. But each birth is different. And that's kind of like the beauty of it too.
Yeah, no, I would say like a snowflake. No two births are ever like. And in my experience as a doula, I always say too, I know less about birth with each birth that I attend. Because you'll be like, oh, second time baby's shorter, or this or that, or you birth this way. But it always humbles you and always reminds you that we have very little control, right, over.
But I mean, in a weird way, I love that because it's, I mean, and even like, look, I know a lot of people love to find out like if they're having a boy or girl because they want to buy stuff or decorate the room. But for me, there's so few like good surprises in life. So
you waited?
Because I was like, I'm having a baby. Like that was people are like, what are you having? I'm like, a baby. Pretty sure about that. And to me, I remember when I got married, the minister that married us, he asked us like, what words do you need to hear to feel married? And one of the words, like I needed to hear, I now pronounce you man and wife. Just maybe I've seen too many movies or whatever, but that was part of feeling married to me. For birth, I wanted that experience of not like the doctor going, okay, 5 fingers, 5 toes, like looking at the ultrasound. It was like it's a girl or it's a boy. Like I wanted that moment. I didn't want to rob myself of that.
I love that. It's interesting. It's very rare. I've only had one client wait.
Really?
I think it's a lot, like just now, or at least the clients I've had, like a lot of people want that, but it's like there's so little surprises, right? With
well, again, it's like that's just my thing, you know. I mean, and that's why I just love that. For me, that it was an option and learning about it, and then it was an option. And again, if at any point I would have and felt unsafe or I needed to go to the hospital, you know, I had a doctor who I could have called and he would have met me at the hospital. He wasn't going to come to my house because I don't think his insurance covered it or whatever, but he was available if I had to go to the hospital. And my midwife really assured me, she's like, Cindy, I'm not going to get to that point if you aren't progressing or whatever. And she made me feel like it was safe, and it was, you know. And was there a point where I was like, oh my God, why didn't I sign up for the epidural? There was a point, I will say, that I was, if it would have been right there, I would have gone, give it to me. Like that was you know, I guess in a weird way, because it wasn't there, you find other coping mechanisms. And I mean, our bodies are meant to give birth. I mean, unless, yes, there are cases where, you know, someone's pelvis is small or whatever. I know there's a lot of women who, you know, they need help, intervention. But for the majority of women, I think natural birth is a natural process, and just kind of trusting in that, and then going inward and I remember the yoga teacher, Guru Mukh, would say, it's like if a huge wave is coming at you, like, what do? You have to dive into it, right? Otherwise it's going to crush you. And I remember like that visualization while I was going through birth is just like, you have to go into that pain. And the great thing is there's a baby at the other side of it. So, you know,
and that's what I keep telling everyone now too in this time. Like, it's with so much fear around giving birth and so much anxiety about the process. Like, and that somebody had wrote this in a post and it was so true. It's like, there is now such a scary time, and we all are like with you and feel you, but there is like the most incredible reward at the other end of it, which is a beautiful thing, you know. Not all, I mean, we can look at everything with a reward at the end of it, but this very courageous process on any day. It's always a courageous process, but especially right now, you know, to hold on to that. But I love what you said about the waves. And Juna, who was on here on Wednesday, it's funny, she brought up the exact same visualization.
Yeah.
It's something I always use with my clients as well. And I think holding on to, you know, that is such a beautiful rhythm to kind of get into, but also in remembering that you're not alone. And for the women right now who are afraid of birthing alone, and luckily in New York, that's changing, yes, but holding on to certain and bringing in that community before the birth, and thinking of how many women have faced those waves and gone under those waves and are going under them with you in this exact moment, I think is helpful. And whether you have, you know, 10 doulas by your side or nobody, like connecting to that, I think is powerful.
Right. And that's, I think for me, like having that group of women, and I think of my group in my yoga class, I might have been the only one that did home.
Oh, really?
But we were still also connected. And I think hearing each other's birth stories, and I mean, everyone is so different. And, you know, like one of the other women in our group, she was the most adamant for sure she was going to have natural, right? She had been a yoga teacher. She was one of the few that ended up with a C-section, because sometimes the baby has its journey too. That's the first lesson of motherhood, is you're not really in charge.
100%. And I'm having somebody, just so you guys know, next Saturday, a client of mine who did have a transfer to a cesarean, because I think it's important to talk about those stories too, right? So many, you know, beautiful, positive home birth stories out there. But like you said, it's also important to give light to some of the situations that don't go as we want, and birth is always beautiful, but we also have to surrender to like the baby's experience as well.
Right. And I would never want a woman who was planning on home, who got transferred, who was planning on natural and ended up getting the epidural or ended up getting a C-section, to feel bad. It's as mothers, I mean, that's our first job, right? Is to like do what we think is best for the baby. So if you have a professional telling you need a C-section, then maybe it wasn't what you have to reframe it and make that your new dream, you know, and just have like the best outcome of a C-section. And look, we all put so much pressure on ourselves all the time to do everything perfect, and we don't need the outside world putting more pressure on us. So my intention of doing this was just to talk about that it is an option, and especially, and I think, you know, as I was thinking about doing this, like some of the women that were chiming in on my Instagram post, you know, they're like 38 weeks pregnant. You know, it might be hard to put this all together in a way that you feel really safe about in a week. Like,
so important.
You need to find a qualified midwife. You need to develop a relationship. You need to feel comfortable. Like, I don't think if I only had like a day to plan a home birth, like I don't know if I would have felt that same confidence that I was doing, you know, what was best for me and my baby and my family.
So important. And I think that's something that's being like glanced over in this conversation that we're having globally right now is, yes, home birth is an incredible, empowering, safe, supported option, but it also comes with a lot of work. Like you know, you were saying, a lot of work, a lot of preparation. And what makes midwifery care, I think, such an incredible model is the amount of time and one-on-one care they're able to spend with their clients. So hopefully this will kind of inspire more people to become midwives, inspire the supply and demand of midwifery care. So then going forward, we give more light to this model. But as you're saying, doesn't necessarily, unfortunately, mean that a home birth next week for some is the better option. Yeah.
But I like it as an option, and like
totally.
And as no judgment, like as women, we shouldn't judge each other about really anything. So even some of the nasty comments that ended up in mine, I thought, wow, like, I mean, okay, you have fear or your baby needed a certain intervention. I don't know. I think judgment, I think about anything, like if we're just open to hearing each other's stories, and that's why I was happy to do this with you and share, because it's been a while since I've talked about, my kids are 18 and 20, so it's been a while. But again, just to offer it as another option for women, and like let's like honor every woman's choice, and every, we all talk about being, pro-choice in other ways, and honoring women's choices. But how we give birth is also a choice. How we raise our children is also a choice.
Yeah.
And no one ever knows why someone might make that decision. And it's important, I think, that we hear each other out and are supportive and listen to each other, as opposed to, you're irresponsible for doing that. Well, you don't know the whole story, maybe, and that's what I've even found with myself, is just checking myself before I judge someone else.
100%. It's been a journey for me too. And one of like the greatest lessons I've gained as becoming a doula is being able to hold space as like an empty container. And we all come with our own ideas of right and wrong and this and that. And especially when we're passionate about people's well-being. And I love that you're saying that, because it's so, so true. Like the ultimate support person, or the ultimate just non-judgmental feeling around this experience, is holding space for what is right, not for you, but for somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love you for saying that. I think it's so important. And right now we could use a lot more of it. Definitely.
So we all have time to I guess work on ourselves as well. I think that's maybe a small silver lining of this whole situation, is like looking at ourselves.
Yeah.
So.
And recognizing our dire need to connect. And I think in this time where we're kind of asked to be in isolation, you see it, we're all rushing to our gathering space, which is online. Right. And even though, yes, there's like problems with that, you still just like, you see that our real most basic desire as humans is to connect. And as soon as we can drop some of that judgment, I think we just allow for a lot deeper connection.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I was going to ask what would be that one piece of advice you'd give birthing mothers right now, but I feel like you answered it. I think that non-judgmental.
I would just say though, like, and this is what, it's just enjoy it. Enjoy that, like, if you're 37 weeks pregnant, enjoy being 37 weeks pregnant. Like, and if have a 2-week-old baby, enjoy that. Like, the next stage is coming. And I think so much, like, when you're first pregnant, you can't wait to have the baby. And then when you have the baby, you can't wait till it's talking and walking. But you don't ever get back. You don't ever get being pregnant or breastfeeding, oh my God, it's like such a beautiful time with your baby. And then all of a sudden they've outgrown that. Or when they say their little cute words, and then all of a sudden they've outgrown that and they're not, they're not having their little baby talk anymore. So just, it goes like that. And I know it's cliche, but it's really true. Like, just enjoy every phase. Enjoy if you're still pregnant, like, enjoy that time, because in a minute you're going to be tired every second, and swollen breast and whatever, and then enjoy that time too, because then that will pass.
Yeah, I love that.
Great.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, this was so nice. This is so great to see you.
For chiming in, right?
Yes.
Everyone who's watching, thank you.
Yes, thank you guys. I hope that I'm inspired and just grateful for your time and for you sharing your story.
Great. Bye. I don't know do I just hit that little X?
Yeah, I think so. I'm
Okay.
gonna try and hang on so I can save it.
Okay. Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Leave.